A dog does not see the world first. It smells it into existence, molecule by molecule, before a single photon reaches the retina. Stand a golden retriever at the edge of a park and its eyes will drift, unfocused, almost indifferent, while its nose works through 100 million receptor cells, sorting the residue of everyone who passed this way before. A jogger from 20 minutes ago. A fox from before dawn. The specific decay of a fallen leaf now different from the leaf beside it. To the dog, this is not background information. This is the primary text. Vision, for us, is the master sense, the one we trust, the one we build metaphors from. We say I see when we mean I understand. But for a dog, understanding arrives through the nose, and what it understands is something we may never be able to fully imagine, because we do not have the architecture for it. The human olfactory bulb is a modest structure tucked low in the brain, easily overshadowed by the vast visual cortex that dominates our neural real estate. In a dog, the proportions invert. Their olfactory bulb is, relative to brain size, roughly 40 times larger than ours, and the surface area of the nasal epithelium, the tissue lined with scent receptors, can exceed 30 square centimeters, folded into scrollwork inside the snout. Humans manage about 3. It is not simply that dogs smell better, in the way a better camera captures a sharper image. The difference is categorical, where we perceive an odor as a single unified impression, coffee, rain, smoke. A dog's brain appears to parse a scent into its constituent chemical layers, the way a trained musician hears not just a chord, but each individual note within it. This raises a genuine problem for anyone trying to describe a dog's experience, and it is worth sitting with that problem rather than rushing past it. Language itself resists the task. Our vocabulary for smell is thin, borrowed almost entirely from vision and touch. We call a scent sharp, bright, heavy, as if we cannot describe an odor without first translating it into some other sense we trust more. Bats have been studied for their peculiar epistemology since the philosopher Thomas Nagel posed his famous question in 1974, asking what it is like to be a bat, navigating a world of returning echoes rather than reflected light. Nagel's point was not really about bats. It was about the limits of imagination. He argued that even if we mapped every neuron in a bat's brain, we still could not know from the inside what echolocation feels like, because our own consciousness is irreversibly shaped by the senses we were born with. The same wall exists between us and the dog on the sidewalk. We can measure its olfactory bulb. We cannot borrow its nose. What we can do is trace the consequences. Dogs possess an organ humans lost the full use of somewhere in our evolutionary past. The vomeronasal organ, sometimes called Jacobson's organ, a secondary olfactory structure nested in the roof of the mouth. It does not process ordinary smells so much as chemical signals tied to hormonal and social information, fear, fertility, stress, identity. When a dog performs that strange behavior scientists call the Flehmen response, lips curled back, jaw slightly open, an almost grimacing stillness, it is drawing air across this organ, reading a layer of information that has nothing to do with sight and everything to do with a chemical autobiography left behind by another animal's body. A dog does not need to see a female in heat. It can read that fact in the air 2 streets away, arriving late to a story that unfolded in scent hours before. There is a second organ worth pausing on, less famous but no less strange. Deep in the canine nasal cavity sits a structure some researchers describe almost as a thermal camera built from tissue, a cluster of nerve endings capable of detecting infrared radiation, the faint heat signature radiating off a living body from several feet away. It is not yet fully understood how much this contributes to a dog's ordinary experience, and scientists remain cautious about overstating its role. But the mere possibility reframes something ordinary. A dog raising its head toward a person across a room, seemingly for no reason, as potentially the detection of something we cannot detect at all. Not a guess, not intuition in the way we use the word. A different sense, quietly doing its work beneath the threshold of our own awareness of it existing. This changes what memory means for a dog, and it changes what time means. Human episodic memory is heavily visual and narrative. We replay scenes, sequences, faces, A dog's memory, researchers increasingly suspect, may be organized around scent trails that encode not just identity, but duration. The freshness of a smell, its rate of chemical decay, functions almost like a timestamp. Where we look at a clock, a dog may, in some rough functional sense, smell the passage of time itself. This scent is an hour old. This one is 3 days old. This one belongs to someone who is no longer nearby. It is a temporal sense built not from watching shadows move, but from the slow oxidation of skin cells and bacteria on the ground. Consider what this means for something as simple as separation. A dog left alone in an apartment does not experience an empty room the way a human might, a space merely absent of company. The room is instead saturated with a decaying record of the owner who just left, a scent trail growing fainter by the hour, each passing minute a small erosion of presence. Some researchers studying canine stress hormones have proposed that part of the anxiety dogs display during long absences may be tied not just to loneliness in the abstract, but to something closer to watching evidence disappear in real time. The chemical proof of a beloved person slowly fading from the air like a photograph left in the sun. When the owner finally returns, the flood of oxytocin and dopamine that follows may be answering not just a social need, but a kind of sensory restoration. The world's dominant narrative thread, suddenly rewritten and made whole again. There is a deeper unease hiding inside all of this, one that reaches past dogs into the architecture of consciousness generally. We tend to assume, quietly and without examining the assumption, that the human sensory hierarchy, sight on top, hearing next, smell somewhere near the bottom, represents something like the natural or correct order of reality. But evolution does not build minds toward a single correct configuration. It builds minds toward survival, shaped entirely by the ecological pressures a species faces. A creature that hunted at night, tracked mates across vast distances, and needed to distinguish kin from stranger through scent alone, would evolve a nervous system that treats smell not as a secondary confirmation of the visual world, but as the world's primary description. For that animal, walking into a room is not unlike us walking into a room with the lights off but the air thick with information. Every surface radiating a quiet chemical narration of who touched it, who breathed near it, what fear or calm passed through recently. Predictive processing, a framework increasingly used in neuroscience to describe how brains construct experience, suggests that no animal, including us, perceives raw reality directly. Instead, the brain builds a constant, running prediction of what the world probably contains, updated moment to moment by incoming sensory data. Vision, for humans, is less a camera and more a highly educated guess corrected in real time. If that is true for us, it is almost certainly true for the dog, except its predictions are built from an entirely different sensory currency. Its guesses about the world are chemical guesses. Its errors are chemical surprises. Somewhere in that animal's skull, an entire predictive model of reality is running, moment to moment, built from an alphabet of molecules we can detect with instruments but never truly read. It is tempting at this point to wonder whether such a mind experiences anything like beauty, and here the science grows appropriately careful. We cannot ask a dog what it finds beautiful, but we can observe behavior that resembles something like fascination. A dog lingering at a single spot far longer than survival would require. Nostrils working with unusual intensity, body still, attention total. Whether this constitutes an aesthetic experience in any sense we would recognize remains outside what current science can confirm. What we can say is that the behavior is not idle. Something is happening there that looks, from the outside, remarkably like absorption. The same quality of stillness a person might show standing before a painting they cannot look away from. This is in the end not a story about dogs being superior perceivers, or humans being deficient ones. It is a story about how many different, equally legitimate versions of reality can exist side by side, unnoticed by each other, occupying the exact same physical space. The jogger who passed through the park 20 minutes ago experienced a walk. The dog, standing in that same patch of grass, experienced something closer to a document, dense, layered, readable, already half-written before its owner even arrived to see it. Two nervous systems, two entirely different worlds, overlapping on the same 6 feet of ground. Neither is an illusion, neither is more true than the other, And when the dog finally looks up at its owner, ears lifting slightly at a familiar voice, it is not stepping out of some lesser sense into the real one. It is simply pausing for